I spent 40 years building a fortune for my children. I gave them everything: the best schools, dream weddings, down payments on their houses. But when I needed them most, they dumped me in a nursing home and forgot I existed. For 3 years, not a single visit, not one call. Then came my 85th birthday, and everything changed. A nurse I barely knew remembered when my own children didn't. That's when I decided to rewrite my will. What happened next tore my family apart, but I have no regrets. My name is Margaret Eleanor Whitmore, and I need to tell you this story before it's too late. I'm 87 years old now, and my hands shake when I write, but some things need to be said while I still have the strength to say them. This isn't a story about revenge, though many people will call it that. This is a story about what happens when love becomes a one-way street, and how sometimes the kindness of strangers means more than the obligation of blood. I grew up during the Depression, the youngest of 5 children in a cramped apartment in Brooklyn. My father worked at the docks when work was available, and my mother took in laundry to make ends meet. We didn't have much, but we had each other. That's what I thought family meant. That's what I thought I was building when I married Robert Whitmore in 1960 and started our life together. Robert was a brilliant man, an engineer with a mind that could solve any problem you put in front of him. We started with nothing, living in a tiny apartment not much different from the one I grew up in. But Robert had a dream. He wanted to create something, to build something that would last. In 1965, he founded Whitmore Engineering Solutions with $5,000 we'd saved and a loan from my father that took us 10 years to pay back. I worked as his secretary, bookkeeper, and partner. We worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. We ate dinner at our desks. We postponed having children because we couldn't afford daycare, and the business needed both of us. By 1972, the company had 20 employees. By 1980, we had contracts with 3 major corporations and over 100 people on payroll. Robert's patents for industrial valve systems became industry standard. We weren't just comfortable, we were wealthy. And finally, we decided it was time to start our family. I was 38 when I had Michael, our first child. It was late for first pregnancy, especially back then, and the doctors warned me about the risks. But Michael came into this world healthy and perfect, with his father's dark hair and serious eyes. 2 years later, against even steeper odds, I had Jennifer. She was my miracle baby, with blonde curls and a smile that could light up a room. I thought we were blessed. I thought we had everything. Robert and I made a decision early on. Our children would never struggle the way we had struggled. They would have every advantage, every opportunity. Michael went to Exeter for high school, then Harvard for undergraduate, and Columbia for his MBA. Jennifer attended Chapin School, then Yale, then got her master's at Stanford. We paid for it all. Every penny. We told them to focus on their studies, not to worry about money. We told them that's what parents do. When Michael married Patricia in 1998, we paid for a wedding at the Plaza Hotel that cost more than my father earned in his entire life. 200 guests, a 12-piece orchestra, flowers flown in from Ecuador. Patricia came from old money, the kind that looks down on people who actually work for a living. But she made Michael happy, or so I thought, so I welcomed her with open arms. We gave them the down payment for their apartment on the Upper East Side. $400,000. Robert wrote the check without blinking. Jennifer's wedding to David in 2001 was even more extravagant. She wanted to get married in Tuscany, so we flew 98 people to Italy for a week. The wedding alone cost close to $300,000. David was a nice enough young man, a lawyer from a good family. I liked him. He seemed to genuinely love Jennifer. We bought them a house in Westchester as a wedding gift. 6 bedrooms, 4 baths, an acre of land. Another $750,000. I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm telling you so you understand the life we gave them, the sacrifices we made, so they could have these things. Robert died in 2004, just 3 years after Jennifer's wedding. He was only 68. A massive heart attack at his desk, working on a Saturday morning, because that's what he did. He worked. He provided. He built something for his family. The funeral was beautiful. Both children gave eulogies that made everyone cry. Michael talked about what an inspiration his father had been, how he'd taught him the value of hard work and integrity. Jennifer sobbed through her speech about what an amazing dad he'd been, always there for her, always supportive. I sat in the front row and held their hands and thought, at least I still have them. At least I'm not alone. Robert left everything in order. His estate was substantial, worth about $8 million after taxes. The will was simple. Everything to me, and then to be divided equally between Michael and Jennifer when I passed. But I didn't need $8 million. I was 71 years old, living alone in our apartment overlooking Central Park. What was I going to do with all that money? So, I became the generous grandmother. Michael and Patricia had 3 children, Robert Jr., Caroline, and Madison. Jennifer and David had 2, Emma and James. I paid for their private schools. I took them on vacations to Disney World, to Paris, to Hawaii. I paid for summer camps and music lessons and tennis lessons and anything else they wanted. I wanted to be the grandmother who made everything possible, the one they'd remember with love. For the first few years after Robert died, the kids were attentive. Michael called every Sunday. Jennifer came over for lunch every week. They included me in their lives. I went to every school play, every soccer game, every piano recital. I was Grandma Maggie and I thought I was loved. But things change. People get busy. Michael made partner at his investment firm, and suddenly those Sunday calls became every other week, then once a month. Jennifer got involved in charity work, chairing committees and organizing galas, and our weekly lunches became monthly, then occasional. I understood. They had their own lives. Their own families. I didn't want to be a burden. I started having health problems in 2018. Small things at first. I'd forget where I put my keys, or I'd start cooking something and forget it was on the stove. One morning I fell in my bathroom and couldn't get up for 2 hours before the housekeeper found me. Nothing was broken, but I was bruised and shaken. When I told Michael about it, he said I should be more careful. When I told Jennifer, she said I was getting older, and these things happen. Then came the stroke in January 2020. I was standing in my kitchen, and suddenly the room tilted, and my left side went numb. I managed to call 911 before I collapsed. I woke up in the hospital 3 days later with partial paralysis on my left side and aphasia that made it hard to speak clearly. The doctors said I'd need intensive physical therapy and speech therapy. They said I couldn't live alone anymore. Michael and Jennifer came to the hospital, of course. They stood by my bed looking worried and somber. The doctors spoke to them in the hallway, and I could see them through the window, nodding seriously, looking at their phones, checking their calendars. When they came back in, Michael held my hand and told me everything was going to be okay. They'd found a wonderful place for me to recover. The best facility in the state. I'd get better there, and then we'd figure out the next steps. I wanted to ask if I could stay with one of them. Michael had that huge apartment with 6 bedrooms. Jennifer had that house in Westchester with more rooms than they could possibly use. But the words wouldn't come out right, and even if they had, I could see in their eyes that this wasn't up for discussion. They'd already decided. Shady Pines Nursing and Rehabilitation Center. That's what they called it, though there wasn't a pine tree in sight, and it was far from shady. It was a massive brick building in New Jersey, an hour outside the city, surrounded by parking lots and strip malls. My room was on the 3rd floor, a small space with a hospital bed, a dresser, 1 chair, and a window that looked out onto the parking lot. The walls were beige. Everything was beige. Michael and Jennifer got me settled. They brought some of my things from the apartment, photos and frames, my favorite blanket, some books. Jennifer arranged the photos on the dresser, mostly pictures of her kids and Michael's kids. She stepped back and smiled and said, "There, now it feels like home, doesn't it, Mom?" I wanted to scream that it felt nothing like home. That home was my apartment with Robert's piano in the living room and the view of Central Park and 40 years of memories in every corner. But I just nodded and said it was nice. They promised they'd visit all the time. Every week, Michael said. At least twice a month, Jennifer added. I'd be out of there in no time once the therapy worked its magic. We'd have Sunday dinners again. Everything would go back to normal. That was February 2020. By March, the pandemic hit, and suddenly no one could visit anyone. The nursing home went into lockdown. No visitors allowed. I understood. Everyone was scared. People were dying. I watched the news in my little room and saw the death counts rising, and felt grateful that at least I was safe here, even if I was alone. The months blurred together. I did my physical therapy with a therapist named Ramon who was patient and encouraging. I worked with a speech therapist named Diane who helped me find my words again. Slowly, incrementally, I got better. My left side grew stronger. My speech became clearer. But I was so alone. I'd see other residents getting window visits from family members who'd hold up signs and wave and blow kisses. I'd watch them FaceTime with their children and grandchildren. My phone stayed silent. I'd get texts from Michael. Just checking in. Hope you're well. Busy week. We'll talk soon. Jennifer would send photos of the grandkids. Emma made honor roll. James scored 2 goals in his soccer game. Look at this sunset in the Hamptons. They were living their lives, and I was watching from a window. The lockdown finally lifted in the summer of 2021. I waited for them to come. I imagined Michael walking through that door with flowers, Jennifer rushing in to hug me. I waited. I watched the elevator at the end of the hall. Other residents got visits. Children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren streaming in on weekends, bringing balloons and cards and love. My room stayed empty. I called Michael. He answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. He was sorry, Mom, but things were crazy. The kids were back in school and had so many activities. Patricia was renovating the apartment. He was traveling for work.
Soon, he promised. Soon.
I called Jennifer. She cried and said she felt terrible. They'd just been so busy. David was up for partner at his firm. The kids had summer programs. She was on the board of 3 charities now. And honestly, Mom, she said the drive to New Jersey was just so far. 2 hours round trip. Where did the time go? She'd come soon. She promised. Soon never came. That first visit I'd been waiting for finally happened in December 2021, almost 2 years after they'd left me there. Michael showed up on a Tuesday afternoon with Patricia and the kids. They stayed for 45 minutes. The kids looked uncomfortable, glancing at their phones, clearly wanting to be anywhere else. Patricia kept checking her watch. Michael asked how I was doing in that overly bright voice people use with children and the very old. When I tried to tell him about my therapy, about how much progress I'd made, he patted my hand and said, "That's great, Mom. That's really great." But his eyes were somewhere else. Jennifer came in February 2022 with just Emma. David and James were busy, she said. They stayed for 30 minutes. Emma was 17 by then, more interested in her Instagram than her grandmother. Jennifer talked about the charity gala she was planning, asking if I remembered the Hendersons and the Berkshires, and all these people from a life that felt like it belonged to someone else now. When they left, Jennifer kissed my forehead and said, "Love you, Mom. We'll come more often, I promise." Another year passed. I got 2 more visits from Michael, 1 from Jennifer. 3 visits in 2 years. The grandchildren came once.
Once.
I'd paid for their entire lives, and they couldn't spare an afternoon for their grandmother. But I had made a friend. Her name was Elena Martinez, and she was one of the night nurses at Shady Pines. She was 47 years old, originally from the Philippines, and had been working as a nurse for 23 years. She worked the overnight shift, which meant we had long, quiet hours to talk when the rest of the world was asleep. Elena started working on my floor in late 2021. At first, our conversations were brief and professional. She'd check my vitals, make sure I was comfortable, adjust my pillows. But slowly, we began to really talk. She told me about her life, how she'd left the Philippines at 24 to work in Saudi Arabia as a nurse, how she'd saved every penny for 5 years to afford nursing school in the United States, how she'd finally gotten her green card and brought her younger sister over to live with her. She told me about her daughter, Sophia, who was studying engineering at Rutgers on a full scholarship. Sophia wanted to be like my Robert, Elena said with pride. She wanted to build things, to solve problems. Elena worked 60-hour weeks to help with Sophia's expenses, even with the scholarship. Books, housing, food, it all added up. But she never complained. She just worked and smiled and told me how blessed she was. I told Elena about my life too. Not the version I told other people, the one about the successful business and the wonderful children and the perfect grandchildren. I told her the truth. I told her about feeling forgotten, about lying awake at night wondering what I'd done wrong, about the silence that filled my phone, about watching other families laugh together in the common room while I sat alone.
Elena listened.
Really listened. She didn't offer empty platitudes or tell me I was being too sensitive. She just held my hand and said, "I see you, Miss Margaret. You are not invisible to me." One night in April 2023, Elena and I were talking about birthdays. Hers was coming up in May, and she was planning to work through it like always. Extra shifts meant extra money for Sophia's expenses. I told her mine was in June 15th. I'd be 85 years old. I said it casually, not expecting anything. Just conversation to pass the night. June 15th, Elena repeated, and I saw her make a note on her phone. I will remember. The weeks passed. Spring turned to summer. June 15th arrived, my 85th birthday. I woke up that morning with a heavy feeling in my chest. I'd sent texts to Michael and Jennifer a week before, casually mentioning that my birthday was coming up. Neither had responded. I told myself not to expect anything. They were busy. They'd probably remember and call later. Breakfast came and went. I sat in the common room and watched families visit other residents. Lunch arrived. Still nothing. I went back to my room and sat in my chair by the window, watching the parking lot, and told myself I was being ridiculous. I was too old to care about birthdays. Then, at 3 o'clock, there was a knock on my door. Elena walked in, even though she didn't work day shifts. She was carrying a small cake with candles and a wrapped present. She was smiling that beautiful smile of hers, and behind her was Sophia, her daughter, carrying balloons. "Happy birthday, Miss Margaret," Elena said, setting the cake on my bedside table. "We could not let this day pass without celebrating you." I started crying. I couldn't help it. Elena and Sophia sang happy birthday, terribly off-key and wonderful. They insisted I blow out the candles and make a wish. Sophia recorded it on her phone and said they'd make it a memory I could keep. Elena cut the cake, store-bought but chocolate, my favorite, because she'd remembered me mentioning it months ago. We sat together and ate cake and talked, and for those 2 hours, I wasn't alone. The present was a framed photo. Elena had asked the staff to print out pictures of me from the activities board, and she'd arranged them in a collage with the words, "You are loved," written in beautiful calligraphy at the bottom. It was the most thoughtful gift I'd received in years. After they left, I sat in my room holding that picture frame, and something inside me shifted. My phone stayed silent all day. No call from Michael. No text from Jennifer. No message from any of my 5 grandchildren. They'd forgotten. All of them had forgotten. But Elena had remembered. Elena, who had her own daughter to care for, her own bills to pay, her own struggles. Elena, who worked overnight shifts and still came in on her day off to make sure I wasn't alone on my birthday. Elena, who barely knew me, had shown me more love than my own children. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Robert, about all those years we'd worked so hard, about all the money we'd made, and all the money I'd given away. I thought about Michael and his expensive apartment, vacationing in the Hamptons, sending his kids to schools that cost more than most people make in a year. I thought about Jennifer in her big house, wearing designer clothes to charity events, posting perfect photos of her perfect life on social media. And I thought about Elena, working overnight shifts, sacrificing sleep and health so her daughter could have opportunities. Elena, who remembered my birthday when my own children didn't. I made a decision that night. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Harold Bergman had been our family attorney for 35 years. He'd handled Robert's business contracts, drawn up our wills, managed our estate planning. He was 72 years old now, semi-retired, but he still took my call immediately. When I told him I wanted to change my will, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Margaret, he said carefully, this is a significant decision. Perhaps we should discuss this with Michael and Jennifer present? Make sure everyone understands.
No interrupta.
My voice was steady.
Clear.
This is my decision, Harold, not theirs. Can you come here, or do I need to find another attorney? He arrived 3 days later with his assistant, a young woman named Rachel who set up a laptop and a small printer on my bedside table. Harold sat in the chair across from me, looking concerned. He asked me again if I was sure if I'd really thought this through. I told him I'd never been more certain of anything in my life. The new rule was simple. I left Michael and Jennifer each $50,000. Not nothing, but a fraction of what they'd been expecting. The apartment, currently valued at around $3 million, would be sold and the proceeds would go into a trust. The remaining assets, investments, and cash would go into the same trust. All of it, roughly $6 million after the bequest to my children, would go to Elena Martinez and her daughter Sophia. The trust was structured to pay for Sophia's education completely, including graduate school if she wanted it. The remainder would provide Elena with a comfortable retirement and the financial security she'd never had. I wanted her to stop working herself to death. I wanted her to have what she'd given me: peace, comfort, dignity. Harold tried one more time to talk me out of it. He warned me about the legal challenges. Michael and Jennifer could contest the will, claim undue influence or diminished capacity. It would be ugly. Was I prepared for that? I looked him straight in the eye and said, Harold, I survived the Depression, built a business from nothing, buried my husband, and spent 3 years alone in this place while my children forgot I existed. I think I can handle whatever comes next. He nodded slowly, then opened his briefcase and pulled out the documents. I signed everything. Rachel witnessed it. Harold notarized it. It was done. I didn't tell Elena. I didn't want her to feel obligated to me or to change how she treated me. I wanted our friendship to remain exactly what it was, genuine, unencumbered by expectations or money. She continued working her overnight shifts, and we continued our long conversations. She told me about Sophia's engineering projects, about her dreams of working on renewable energy systems. I told her about Robert and how he would have loved meeting Sophia, how proud he would have been to see a young woman following in his footsteps. Months passed. I grew stronger, healthier even. The physical therapy had worked. I could walk with a cane now. My speech was almost back to normal. I could have left Shady Pines, maybe found an assisted living facility closer to the city. But I didn't. This was my home now. Elena was here. The few friends I'd made were here. My children weren't going to suddenly start visiting me anywhere else. So, what difference did it make? Michael called in September 2023, completely out of the blue. He needed me to sign some papers related to one of Robert's old patents. There was a company willing to license it, and the money would go into the estate. Could I just sign and send them back? I signed. I sent them back. He thanked me via text. Jennifer called in November. She was chairing a gala for a children's hospital and wondered if I'd like to make a donation. They were honoring major contributors with a plaque in the new wing. I asked her if she might visit when she was in the area. She said she'd try, but the gala planning was consuming all her time. I donated $10,000. She sent me a thank you card with a pre-printed message and her signature stamped at the bottom. Christmas came and went. I got a card from Michael's family with a photo of them on a ski trip in Aspen. Everyone was wearing matching red sweaters and perfect smiles. I got a gift basket from Jennifer, the generic kind you can order online: crackers, cheese, chocolate. The card said, "Thinking of you," and was signed with just her first name. Elena brought Sophia to visit me on Christmas Eve. They brought me a wool blanket that Elena had knitted herself, deep purple with silver threads running through it. Sophia gave me an ornament she'd made in a metalworking class, a little silver star with my initials engraved on it. We sat together and watched It's a Wonderful Life on my small TV and ate cookies that Sophia had baked. It was the best Christmas I'd had in years. I turned 86 in June 2024. Elena and Sophia threw me another birthday party, this time with a few other nurses and residents who'd become my friends. We had cake and sang songs and played cards. My phone stayed silent. Again. For the second year in a row, my children forgot my birthday. That night, Elena sat with me after her shift started. I could see she was troubled. Finally, she said, "Miss Margaret, I do not understand your children. How can they not see what they have? How can they not know what they are missing?" I patted her hand and said, "Some people don't value what they have until it's gone. By then, it's usually too late." She asked me if I'd ever told them how I felt. I admitted I hadn't, not directly. I'd been raised to not complain, to not be a burden, to accept what was offered and be grateful for it. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe my silence had allowed them to believe this was acceptable. So I wrote letters. Long ones. I told Michael everything I'd been holding inside, how abandoned I felt, how much it hurt to be forgotten, how I'd given him everything and he couldn't give me an hour of his time. I told Jennifer how I'd watched her become someone I didn't recognize, someone who valued appearances over actual relationships, someone who posted photos of family moments I wasn't included in and called it love. I mailed the letters. I waited. Michael called 3 days later, angry. He said I was being unfair. He visited when he could. He had responsibilities. His family needed him. Did I expect him to drop everything and drive to New Jersey every week? I was being selfish. Jennifer called crying. She said I was breaking her heart. She loved me. She thought about me all the time. But I didn't understand how busy she was, how many demands were on her time. She promised she'd do better. She'd visit more. This time she meant it. That was July 2024. It's now October 2025, and I've seen Michael twice and Jennifer once since those phone calls. Each visit lasted less than an hour. They ask the same surface questions, check their phones constantly, and leave with the same promises about coming back soon. But here's what else happened. In August 2024, I had another stroke. A smaller one this time, but still serious. I was in the hospital for a week. The nursing home called Michael and Jennifer immediately. Michael sent flowers to the hospital room with a card that said, "Get well soon, Mom." He called once, spoke to my doctor, and told him to keep him updated. He never came to the hospital. Jennifer visited once on a Wednesday afternoon. She stayed for 20 minutes, mostly talking to the doctors and nurses, asking questions about my prognosis and care plan. When she finally sat by my bed, she held my hand and said, "You're going to be fine, Mom. You're tough. You've always been tough." Then her phone rang and she took the call right there in my hospital room, discussing flower arrangements for some event. She left while still on the phone, waving goodbye to me. Elena was there every day. She'd come after her shifts, still in her scrubs, exhausted from working all night. She'd sit by my bed and tell me stories about Sophia, about the new apartment they'd just moved into, about the rescue cat they'd adopted. She brought me books to read and magazines to look through. She advocated for me with the hospital staff, making sure I got the best care, that my pain was managed, that I was comfortable. When I came back to Shady Pines, Elena had decorated my room. She'd hung up cards from the other residents, put fresh flowers on my dresser, and placed a new photo on my nightstand. A picture of the three of us from my last birthday, smiling together, a real family. That's when I knew I'd made the right decision about the will. Whatever happened, however ugly it got, I had no regrets. I'm writing this now because I know my time is running out. The doctors say my heart is weakening. They talk about quality of life and making arrangements in those careful euphemisms medical professionals use when they mean you're dying. I could have months or weeks. I don't know. What I do know is that I want to tell this story before I can anymore. I want people to understand why I did what I did. Not for sympathy or vindication, but because I think there are other elderly people out there feeling exactly what I felt. Invisible. Forgotten. Wondering if they imagine the love they thought they had. And I want other people, younger people, busy people, people with aging parents they keep meaning to call, to understand what they're doing. Or not doing. You think there's always time. You think next week, next month, next year you'll make that visit, make that call be better. But time runs out. And you can't get it back. Last week, Michael called. Not to check on me, but because he needed me to sign papers to release funds from a trust Robert had set up. He was investing in some business opportunity and needed capital. While we were on the phone, I heard Caroline in the background asking him to hurry up. They were going to be late for dinner. He rushed me off the phone with a quick, "Love you, Mom," that sounded like a reflex, not a feeling. Jennifer texted me a photo yesterday. She and David were at a restaurant in Manhattan, some exclusive place with a 6-month wait list. The caption said, "Date night. Life is good." I stared at that photo for a long time. They were 30 minutes away from me. 30 minutes. But it never occurred to her to make the drive out here, to bring me some of that good life she was celebrating. Meanwhile, Elena has been picking up extra shifts to help Sophia with a summer engineering program in Germany. Sophia was accepted into a prestigious program at the Technical University of Munich, a huge honor, but the expenses are substantial even with the stipend. Elena is exhausted, working double shifts, but she still stops by my room every night. Last night, she fell asleep in the chair next to my bed, and I just watched her sleep and thought about what love actually looks like. It doesn't look like expensive weddings and designer clothes and social media posts. It doesn't look like Christmas gift baskets and generic cards. It looks like a nurse working herself to exhaustion who still takes time to sit with a lonely old woman. It looks like remembering someone's birthday when they feel forgotten by the world. It looks like showing up consistently, without being asked, without expecting anything in return. I haven't told Elena about the will. I've thought about it many times, especially recently as my health has declined. But I want her final memories of me to be uncomplicated by money or obligation. I want her to remember me as her friend, as someone who valued her, not as a benefactor she felt indebted to. Harold Bergman has all the instructions. After I'm gone, he'll execute the will. He's warned me again about the inevitable conflict. Michael and Jennifer will be shocked, angry, probably devastated. They'll likely contest the will. They'll call Elena terrible names, accuse her of manipulation and elder abuse. They'll drag it through the courts and make it as ugly as possible. Harold has prepared for all of it. The will is ironclad. I was evaluated by 2 separate psychiatrists who determined I was of sound mind. I documented everything. The lack of visits, the forgotten birthdays, the entire history of my relationship with my children. Harold says we'll win, but it won't be pleasant. I think about that sometimes, about how Michael and Jennifer will react. Will they be hurt?
Probably.
Will they feel betrayed? Almost certainly. But will they understand why I did it? Will they look back on the last 5 years and see how they treated me? Will they have any self-awareness about their role in this outcome? I don't know. I hope so, but I don't know.
Part of me still loves them.
They're my children. I remember Michael as a little boy, so serious and studious, bringing me flowers he'd picked from the neighbor's garden. I remember Jennifer twirling in her room in a princess dress, making me be the audience for her performances. Those children existed once. I don't know where they went. Maybe I failed them somehow. Maybe by giving them everything, I taught them that everything was owed to them. Maybe by never requiring anything of them, by never being a burden, by always being accommodating and understanding, I made it too easy for them to forget me. Maybe there's blame enough to go around. But I can't change the past. I can only decide what happens with what's left. And I've decided that my money will go to someone who showed me kindness when kindness wasn't required. Someone who saw me as a person worthy of love and attention, not an obligation to be managed. Someone who will use it to build a better life, the way Robert and I built our life from nothing. Sophia wants to work on sustainable energy systems. She wants to help solve climate change, to make the world better for future generations. My money will help her do that. It will give her opportunities without burying her in debt. It will allow Elena to retire with dignity, to rest after decades of caring for others. That feels right. That feels like the best possible legacy I could leave. The lawyer who reviews this will might call it revenge. The psychiatrist who evaluated me asked repeatedly if I was doing this out of anger or spite. I told them the truth. I'm not angry.
I'm sad. I'm disappointed.
But I'm not doing this to punish my children. I'm doing it to reward someone who deserves rewarding. There's a difference. If Michael and Jennifer had visited me regularly, If they'd remembered my birthdays, if they'd included me in their lives, would I have changed my will? Probably not. The money would still have gone to them because that's what wills do. They go to family. But I wouldn't have felt the desperate need to ensure that Elena and Sophia were taken care of. I wouldn't have felt like I needed to make a statement about what love means and who actually practices it. They had every chance, every opportunity. I never made it difficult for them. I never demanded their time or attention. I never complained or guilt them. I just waited, and waited, and waited. And the waiting showed me who they really were. Elena just came in. She brought me soup from a Filipino restaurant in town, saying she knows the hospital food here isn't good and I need to keep my strength up. She's sitting with me now while I finish writing this, telling me about Sophia's latest project, something about solar panel efficiency that I don't fully understand but love hearing about anyway. In a few minutes, we'll eat soup together and watch Jeopardy, our nightly routine. These are the moments that make life worth living. My children gave me money's worth of education and houses and vacations. Elena gave me presents, attention, dignity, love. In the end, there's no comparison. I want to be clear about something. I don't think every elderly person who changes their will is justified. I don't think every disappointed parent should disinherit their children. Family is complicated. Sometimes children have very good reasons for maintaining distance from their parents. Sometimes parents were abusive or neglectful, and the adult children are simply protecting themselves. I understand that, but that's not my story. I was a good mother. Not perfect, no one is, but I was present. I was loving. I sacrificed. I supported. I gave everything I had. And in return, I got forgotten. So yes, I changed my will. And when it's read after I'm gone, my children are going to be shocked. They're going to feel like the rug was pulled out from under them. They're going to say I wasn't thinking clearly, that Elena manipulated me, that this isn't what I would have wanted. But I'm writing this now, while I'm still alive, still coherent, still able to make my wishes absolutely clear. This is exactly what I want. To Michael and Jennifer, if you're reading this someday, I loved you. I always loved you. But love isn't just a feeling you have. It's actions you take. It's time you make. It's showing up, especially when it's inconvenient. I showed up for you every day of your lives. You couldn't show up for me once a month. That's the truth, and it's painful, but it's true. I don't expect you to understand right away. I expect you'll be angry, maybe forever. But I hope that someday, when you're old and your children are busy with their own lives, you'll remember this. You'll remember what it felt like to be forgotten. And maybe you'll make different choices than you made with me. To Elena, who will probably never read this, but who I want to honor anyway. Thank you. Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible. Thank you for remembering my birthday when my own children forgot. Thank you for sitting with me through long nights and sharing your life with me. Thank you for showing me that family isn't always blood, and love isn't always where you expect to find it. You gave an old woman dignity and friendship when she needed it most. I hope this gift gives you and Sophia the same. I'm tired now. Writing this has taken more energy than I thought it would. But I needed to tell this story. I needed people to understand, because I know I'm not the only one. I know there are countless elderly people in nursing homes and assisted living facilities and lonely apartments, waiting for visits that never come, for calls that don't ring, for children who promise to come soon but never do. If you have aging parents, please visit them.
Call them.
Not when it's convenient, but regularly.
Make the time.
They raised you, sacrificed for you, gave you everything they had. They deserve better than to spend their final years wondering if they imagined your love. And if you're someone who works with the elderly, a nurse, an aide, a therapist, a volunteer, please know how much you matter. You might think you're just doing your job, just being kind, just showing basic human decency. But to someone who feels forgotten by everyone else, you're everything. You're proof that they still matter, that they're still seen, that they're still worthy of love and attention. Never underestimate the impact of your presence. As for me, I have no regrets.
None.
I made my choice, and I'd make it again. I spent 40 years building a fortune for children who couldn't spare an afternoon for their mother. Now that fortune will go to someone who showed me what really matters. Elena just asked me what I'm writing. I told her it's just some old memories, nothing important. She smiled and said, "All your memories are important, Miss Margaret. Your life is important. That's the difference right there. That's everything." The sun is setting outside my window. Elena is humming softly while she checks my vitals. Soon we'll watch Jeopardy and eat our soup and talk about Sophia's dreams and mine. Soon my time will come to an end, and the will shall be read, and chaos will ensue. But right now, in this moment, I am not alone. I am seen. I am valued. I am loved. And that, in the end, is worth more than all the money in the world. If this story touched your heart, please share it. Someone you know might be sitting in a nursing home right now, waiting for a visit that never comes. Someone might need to read this and realize they need to call their mom or dad before it's too late. Hit that like button if this made you think differently about family and what really matters. Subscribe for more real stories that remind us what's truly important in life. And most importantly, if you have aging parents or grandparents, close this video and call them.
Visit them.
Don't wait until it's too late to show them they matter. Because someday, you'll be the one waiting for someone to remember you exist. Make sure you've earned that visit. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to tell, but it needed to be told.